Okay, good morning, everybody. My name is Samantha Mirabal with Melco's application team, and I'm here today to kind of answer whatever questions you might have about DesignShop or the machines or whatever. A lot of the questions I have today are actually ones that really need me to demo stuff on my machines, which are in the other room, and they're all being run. So I think I'm going to have to record those separate and to upload as standalone little videos that we can answer questions on. But I'll talk to them where I can here. But there's quite a few that I can show you the digitizing side, but equally important is the machine side. So, all right. If you have questions, we're live on both Facebook and YouTube. Type them in on the comments on either platform. If you see me looking off to the side or getting distracted by my computer monitors, that's what I'm doing. I'm looking at the different questions being asked and trying to keep track. All right, so let's jump right on in. When you have a large, huge design, and how do you program it so you can hoop it 3 times and keep sewing? All right, so it's not so much about programming the machine to start off with. It's about setting up the designs, and then it's about hooping it on the machines. All right, so for the design side, let's take a look at that. So I made a design, and my dog, I'm gonna have to boot him because he was laying all nice and calm, and now he's decided that because I stood up, that means it's playtime. Anyway, all right, it's wasting time while I get my design here. Okay, so the first part, good morning. So you're new to DesignShop. Where should I start looking for videos? If you go to melcouniversity.com, there's links there, so I can show you that. And so if I go to Melco, good grief. All right, let's just go to the site because it seems to be, and there's Melco University. All right, under here, media. So these are different playlists that you can look at. So this is a good place to start. Good morning, Maisha. So you can always start at these to learn digitizing, and I would start at the top and work your way down. If you're looking at working on the actual machine, take a look down here. Good morning in Nebraska. I'm in Florida. It's good and warm down here today. All right, so our first question was how to set up and run multiple hoopings. So I made some text, and this thing ends up being 41 inches long. I was just writing something. This thing right here is actually the 11 by 17 hoop, that the inner dotted line. So what I did for that is I turned on the hoop and kind of traced that dotted line roughly. I'm not looking for exact, but I'm just looking to have a reference that I can move around to decide how many hoopings I want to do this in. Okay, so just for grins, what I started off with was typing my text, and then I copied and pasted my little roughed in thing of the different hoopings I would have. All right, so from there, now we have to set it up and break the design up so that it fits in 3 or 4 separate files. In this case, I have it set up for 4. All right, so what did I do? So first off, I left it all in one file, and I copied and pasted, and each color that you see here, so blue is the text I'm going to do first. This is 40 inches. And then my second hooping will be long setup. Third hooping will be multiple hoopings. And the next one is going to be 2 sew out. Okay, so I planned it for 4 hoopings. What you would do when you go to sew it is you're going to chalk out the line and things like that. So how do we actually set this into 4 separate files? All right, so first off, let me turn that off. All right, so now that I know how I'm going to set it up, the first one's easy. So I'm going to copy, go to a new file, paste, and I'm going to line it up right on the origin. So so that the bottom is right on the red line, because that's going to be the line that I'm going to chalk. And for this one, I'm just going to center it in the hoop because it's going to sew first, so that's all that matters. Okay. All right. Oops. I shouldn't have centered it. I should have just moved it. There we go. All right. So I'm going to line it up. I can do my laser left, laser right, laser bullseye on the line we've chalked on the garment, on the whatever you're doing. If you're using webbing, you can do it on that, whatever it is. So you're going to align it, and then you're going to sew this one out. Cool. That's the easy part. So now how do we set up our second file? All right. Oops. Where's my multiple hoopings? So now what I'm going to do is copy these first ones over, and you've got to plan out how you're doing this. All right. So what I want is to set it up so that when I do my alignment, my needle is going to be on something that I can align to on my design. So in this case, I like square corners. It's easier to do. So I'm going to plan that when I do my alignment, which is going to be my laser left, laser right, laser bullseye, which it's going to justify to the left that way. I want the needle to drop right down on that corner of that H, okay, which is already sewn, remember? All right, so literally what I would do is go on my hooped item, laser left, laser right, laser bullseye, and then I'd move around until my needle drops right on that corner of the H. Okay, so this, we don't need this, it's already sewn. So I'm going to, there it is, operations. I'm just going to convert it to a vector so it stays put, because this is the only sewing I want. So could you have done that with this point on the S? Absolutely. I just like leaving it up with a corner. It's easier to line up. Okay. So at that point, now this file is set up to sew just long setup. All right. So I'm going to do the alignment sequence just so I can show them to you. I think I have it in here. Yeah, right here. So I want it to this one. Yeah, justify to the left. So laser left, laser right, laser bullseye. That's the command. And that will do the left justify. So what I'm showing you here is the exact same technique that is recorded in a video that was done with some ribbon around Christmas time that Nate did. So it's the same technique. I'm just showing it to you with text. All right. So this would be file 2. So if I were going to save it, I'd call this file 2, you know, file 2, whatever. All right. And then the first one, this one would be file 1. All right. And you just continue building it. So the next one is going to be here. So I need something on the first one to line up to. So I'm going to copy that. And I'm going to make a new file, paste. And again, I'm just going to pick the U because it's got a nice clean point that I can line it up. All right. So I'm just going to line it up. So the U is right at the origin where the red things line up. Convert this to vector so it won't sew because we don't want it to sew. I just need that as a point. And now this file is set up. File, save as, file 3. Okay, so again, I would go to my chalked line, pick any 2 points, wide, laser left, laser right, laser bullseye, and then I'd move the hoop around until my needle drops right on the corner of my U. Okay, the wider you do your alignment, the more likely you're going to have a straight line. If you do points really close, you have to be super accurate. Further apart, the angle is shorter. Okay. All right, so this one is going to be 5. Was this file 3 already? Yeah. All right. So you just continue doing that. So if I do the last one, copy these 2, new, paste. Let's see, I'm going to use the N. Again, that's just a personal preference. I like using points. So I'm going to use the bottom corner of the N. Line it up. Convert what I already have to vector. That's already sewn out so that this is what's left. Okay. So we do have a link on laser alignment for you. How would you go about doing this for a fill longer than a hoop? Okay, so this is lettering, which fits in the hoop. So I guess what you're asking is, all right, so if I've got a tiny hoop, let's say the biggest hoop you have is this guy, and you're trying to sew that, something like that, right? So in this case, what you're going to have to do is, again, think about what you're going to use for alignment, right? And then split your element up with some amount of overlap. So I would probably, I didn't want to do that, undo. So what I would probably do is add some points and split it, have some overlap, and then put an alignment point underneath here where it's going to get sewn over. Okay, like an X or something like that, to do my alignment from. So basically, let's see, how can I show you that without making a mess and confusing it more? All right, so copy paste. All right, so let's say that's what we want to sew. Well, what I would do is, this one's going to be my second hooping, and in my first hooping, you can even use, this is kind of a fun little, oops, that's not an X, huh? You can even, just a fun little trick, if you're going to use, rather than digitizing them, you can use a bean X, and just use the cross in the center of that as your alignment point. So you can actually just use lettering for it. So let's say I'm going to use that point, copy paste, and that point. It's going to get sewn over, so you can just leave those there. So this would be hoop 1, and then when you set this up, you just have to know where that is relative to the rest of it that you're going to sew out. So multiple hooping projects take a little bit of thinking of how you're going to break it apart, how you're going to align it. There's different ways to do alignment, whether you're doing mixed media, or if you're doing just straight embroidery, like what I'm demonstrating here is just straight embroidery. There's no mixed media aspect to it. When you're doing the mixed medias, those are printed, so they tend to shrink some. So there's a different feature within the software of using a vector line, which will actually not only rotate and scale and line it all up for you, but it also scales it to allow for that shrinkage. Okay, so let's see, if I were to set this one up to actually sew out, these are going to be my alignment points relative to that. So I'm going to copy all, so that this out of my first hooping. All right, so my first design would be this. All right, so that would be what sews first. And then I would personally, I would copy my X's in this, go to a new file, paste, and then however, whichever one you want to do your alignment. If you're going to do laser, that left justify trick, then you would line it up right on that first X. There. Hi there, Christian. All right, and then these we don't need anymore, so we'd operation convert to vector. So again, you would use that point and that point as your laser left, laser right, and then you would laser bullseye. It would rotate and align it, and then you would sew it. Basically move the hoop around until you're right on the center of that X, and then you're good to go. All right, so I've seen some really cool projects that are huge, like a, I don't know, let's say an embroidered stocking that has a bunch of plants and other stuff coming out of it. It's all embroidered, so it's supposed to be an art piece. So I've seen the bottom half all done, and then they put alignment points up that you then re-hoop and align to sew all that beautiful detail up top. So it's just a matter of planning out where you're going to do those alignment points, if you're going to have to pick them out or if you can cover them up. If you can cover them up like this, it doesn't matter. You just, sew an X in. It's going to sew over with a fill anyway, so it's just going to go underneath it. Now, if it's not going to be able to be covered up, well, then you've got to put them in places with stitch types that you can actually pick out. All right. Okay, so let's see. Let me quick look and make sure I didn't miss. We have a question that was typed in on Facebook. I noticed last week you used copy and paste. Where I would use duplicate. Can you explain the difference and why you would use one versus the other? They're the same thing. I am attached to my keyboard, copy paste, Control C, Control V. I find it speeds things up for me rather than coming over here, right click, duplicate. It does the same thing. It takes the element that I have selected, Control C, Control V, is the exact same thing as me coming over here, right click, duplicate. So it's the only reason I use copy paste is because I like my keyboard. Keyboard commands, they take a little bit to get used to, but learning them really helps improve your speed with digitizing. So I highly recommend learning keyboard stuff as you can. All right, Lorena, it's springtime in Alaska at 12 above. Congrats on the warm weather. Ooh, still too cold for me, so you enjoy it. All right. Yoda, hopefully that helped with, how. Now, when you're splitting things like this, there's other considerations. Like if I'm splitting a fill, I don't want a line there, so then you're going to have to do, other techniques to kind of blend it in. Okay. So let's see. What other questions do we have? Let me go back. So I talked about setting up the design. So this one here is talking about realigning things. So when, let's say something falls out of a hoop, which is obnoxious, or I don't know, you just need to fix this part of the design. Yes, you can set up just like I was setting up these designs over here with X's. Rather than using your X's, you would look for features on what's already been sewn out to use as registration points, and then decide whether you're going to do a left justify, a right justify, rotate and center. How are you going to use those features to line up your design? So, so it's really just about looking at what you have and working with it. I've had things fall out of the hoop where entire letters ended up getting missed. So what I've done is exactly what I showed you with this multiple hooping thing. I've picked areas on the text that I can use as alignment references for my laser left, laser right, laser bullseye, and then put the rest of the design that I'm trying to fix relative to that on the origin. So it's the same technique. It's just about thinking about how you want to set up the design. We have a question. What if you want to split a design that you might have that goes in 4 segments? It's all the same, right? So how I do it personally is I plan it in one file like I have here. So let's say what I really had was my 4 hoopings were going to be something like this, right? So I would plan out what's going to sew in each hoop and then decide what I'm going to use as registration points for the next hoop and make sure it all fits within that, right? So it's really a thinking exercise, a puzzle of how you're going to line it out. And like I said, that's how I do it. I tend to plan it all in one file. And then once I'm happy with all the different things and I know what I'm using for my different registration points, then I split it up into my separate sew files. And I also save the master file of where it's all combined. So if I made a mistake or forget what I used as alignment points, which that's usually more the case, I can go back to my original kind of conglomerate of all of them put together and go, oh yeah, there it is. I used this feature here and that feature there, or I drew a line underneath the design over here. So yeah, you can, it's really just, I'll say, I do a lot of projects that are 4 or more hoopings personally, and that's exactly what I do. I literally plan it out, think about what I'm using as my alignment references, and go from there. Add my little registration points if I'm going to chalk it out, if I'm going to do a bottom justify, a center, and just think about it and put those little X's and make sure they get covered up or they're outside of the final design where they're not going to be seen. Okay. What else do we have? To be more specific on last week's question about shortcut, is there a list of items such as micro movements with arrow keys and how to restrain a point and all that? So I'm not aware of a single, here are all the different short keys list for those sorts of things, but they're all in the manual. So I grabbed some screenshots from them. So this is straight from the DS manual, where moving elements with arrow keys. So it's shift and arrow will move 1 point. Holding shift and alt and arrow points will do a millimeter of motion. Shift and control will do a centimeter of motion. So that's the movements. Wireframe editing commands, there's a whole bunch of them that, again, really help speed up your process if you know them. But here are all the little hotkeys. They explain them: control and drag, shift, click, drag, and those sorts of things. They're all listed in the manual. Same with the scaling and changing things from one to another. That shift and alt thing that I'm often showing for converting elements from one type to another. So all of those are in the manual. Like I said, I'm not aware of one list of all these different things because they are kind of tied to what function they are within the manual. Okay, but here's a few of the fun ones. The manual, you can get to it by clicking on the little question mark, and that will bring up your manual. And then there's these fun little topics over here. How I found those really quick is I typed in search for the word shift. Let's see. Stop it. Control F, shift. And I just kept looking at them, going to the next one. And it shows all the different ways you can use these. Like there's one. That's how I found them quick to show you. Okay. All right. We did those. I've upgraded from DesignShop 9 to 11. That's cool. There's a lot of new features there. How can I import a vector graphic so that it shows as an image I want to do, as I want to do some mixed media designs? So you open it, right? So if I go File, Open, let's go to my C drive, Designs, Graphics, let's do the EPS. All right, so I open that, and here is my vector. So let's say on this design, that's going to be printed. All right, I'm going to use a printed fabric of some sort, or I'm going to print something. So I just want a placement. Well, rather than converting that to a fill, what I can do is hold my shift key down. Oops, stop that. Shift and click on the select walk, and now that's an outline of that shape. Okay, so you can do it that way. There was another nuance to the question that I forgot already. Okay, so I want a single line instead of so I did a walk, so let me show you a single line. So instead of a walk, if I select that graphic then, and I can either use this change element from one type to another, or I can hold shift and click there. So if I click on this, it does the same thing. Let's say I want a single line center and I want to add it. So now, if I turn it in 3D, you can see I've got a single line center, which is actually showing up weird. And I just broke it. Isn't that cool? I need to update my graphic driver. Scott pointed that out to me earlier. Open. Cup. Let's make this a decent size. Let's make it 4 inches tall. Shift click. There we go. So now I have a single line center. All right. How do you delete a JPEG in DesignShop? Okay, so up here there's a JPEG. So what you would want to do to delete it is, so you can't, JPEGs are not, cancel, sorry, clicking all over the screen here. JPEGs are non-selectable on the screen. Okay, they're in the background, you can't select them. You can only select them over here in your tree. So you'd select it and hit the delete key. And the JPEG be gone. So if I undo, again, select it and hit the delete key, and it goes away. Okay. You can also right click on it and say delete, but you have to select it over in your project view over here. All right. So we did the single line. around what would be printed. Cool. So with an in the hoop the design, can software split the design to allow a larger design than the largest hoop is capable? Yes. It's not that the software splits it, it's you have to think about it and plan it out. So you have to think about what's going to sew in hooping 1, what's going to sew in hooping 2, and what you're going to use as your alignment points. So I'll see, I didn't get a chance to make one, but I'll see if I can either find an old design and record it for you or I'll make one for you, a bag or something really large in the hoop, so that I can show you how I split it apart so you can see that technique. Oh, maybe a pillowcase. I don't know. Whatever. If you have an idea, let me know what you want to see and I'll make a file. How about that? And I'll record making it, and if I can get it quiet out there when there's not 12 machines running and I can actually hear myself talk, I'll record the video too. Okay. How does one create gradients in DesignShop? Okay, so we have quite a lot of resources out there for you. There's a blog article on Melco's blog that Nate did a while back. There's a nice little document out on Zendesk, as well as a link to some videos that were done in the past. Blends are fun. So I know Nate likes doing them different than me, so I will tell you that up front. Because when I'm playing with these sorts of things, I always use auto. And I'll explain that in a sec. So if I have a fill, and now I want that to be a blend, right? So I'm going to go into the properties of it, go into effects. I'm going to turn on custom density and blend. I like turning on my auto apply. And that's different. Hey, found something for y'all. Properties, effects, blend. Huh. I'm running a beta that you guys don't have. Apparently I just found a bug that wasn't there in the prior one. All right, let me go open the old version of the software. I'm sorry. I've been running a beta. Let's see, program files, Melco, that one. There it is, there's the old one. Let's go do it again. Got me a box. Put it in 3D, properties, effects, custom density, blend, apply, give it another color. There we go. I've got a 2-color blend going here. Not a very pretty 2-color blend, but a 2-color blend nonetheless. So here, what I tend to do is this is a version you would have, not what I was playing with. What I would do here is look at what you're trying to get blended, whatever different colors, set that up. Yeah, it's cute. All right, and then I turn on auto apply here, and under effects, so custom density, there's different ones you can play with, but I always turn on auto apply so that I can see what happens real time as I change things. So over in this little box, I can move it around and go, okay, this is what happens when I move this around. Okay, and I tend to make large swinging changes so I can see it fast, and then I dial into what I actually want it to look like. I can add points along here, and again, move that so you can see you can get different looks. They have different versions here. All right, you can change the densities, but that will do a blend for you. So since I did that fast, how did I do that? So I created a fill. I went into the properties of the fill, right-click properties, went to effects, turned on custom density, and then I turned on blend. And then once I turned on blend, I clicked a second color. So now I have a 2-color blend that I can now play with. Okay. I totally want to eliminate or delete the JPEG file before I open it. Well, that I don't understand, because you can't delete things in a file without opening it. So you have to open the file and then delete the JPEG. So I guess I'm missing what you're trying to do, because I can't just come over here to, where is it? A design file. And go, okay, I want to delete a JPEG out of this file. I have to open that file, select the JPEG, and delete it. So I guess I'm not understanding what you're looking to do there. If you just want to delete a JPEG off your computer, you just find the JPEG and hit delete. I'm missing something. I'm sorry, Pat. If you can let me know, and I try to help there. But yeah, to delete a JPEG out of a file, you have to open the file first. We did get you the link to the blends there. Okay. But yeah, that's the simple way of how you do them, right? You go into the properties, turn on effects, under effects, and turn on the blends. What's the best way to digitize a raised design, not necessarily lettering, without the use of foam? Okay, so foam's the easiest. But if not, it's just a matter of building up stitches, right? So some things to look at if you've never looked at them. If you go into decorative and look at these, like these 13-point stars. If you sew these out, these things, see how the stitches go over the center a bunch of times? So that area is, because it's crossed over a whole bunch of times, it's going to be rounded. So these actually sew as cute, pretty little balls. If you're wanting a satin stitch to sew more raised, well, then you would build up the underlay. Right, so one technique I've used is I go into the properties, go to underlay, let's say a zigzag underlay with a border margin, whatever, and then lower the density a lot. So that's going to increase your stitch count a lot, but what is that doing? That's going to put a whole row of, so if I play this so you can see it, I got to slow it down if you actually want to see it. How about that? See all those stitches it does? It does a whole lot of stitches down the center, so that when the top stitching comes over, it's nice and raised. So those are different. Basically, to make it look raised without foam, you have to build up stitches underneath it to raise up the top stitching. Satin stitches are going to stand up better than fills. Fills are going to bury into the fabric regardless. So there's really, without using foam, there's not a whole lot of ways you can make a fill look puffed up. But satin stitches, you just build up the metal with different stitching so that when the final top stitching comes over, it has something to rest on to raise it up. Tara asked, DesignShop shuts down when I'm working on it. Is there a fix? I'd need a little more details on when it's shutting down about your computer. What I would suggest is, if you've got where that's happening, if you can call tech support and demo it for them, or send it over to applications with what's happening. Tech support might be the best start though, because if it's something with your computer, like in my case, my graphic driver right here needs to be updated. They'll be able to help get that all straightened out for you. But I need a little more info of what you're doing when it crashes to be able to help you there. Pat, let me know if you have any more clarifications on the JPEG. I'm not 100% sure how to answer you there. Okay, what else do we have? Okay, new to this. How do I create stops for making purses or applique? All right, so how do you make stops? Those are color changes, right? So, where's DesignShop? There we go. So if I draw a box, and I don't want that. So if I want to make this like an applique, my design would be, I would make that file, I'd copy and paste it, make it a new color. So now when I go to my machine, I can program in an applique stop, because I would color one, click the applique button, and then I'd color two. When it goes to sew, when it hits that, when you hit the applique, the machine will stop, the hoop will come out from under there, and you will then be waiting until you go lay your fabric down or whatever it is you want to do next. All right, let's see. How do you make the block font thicker than 3 points pull offset, not wider with width? Huh? block font. Okay, so let's see if I understand what we're asking here. All right, so I've got a block font, and you want it thicker, so just add however much thicker you want. Is that what you're asking, Katiana? Okay, Tana. Sorry if I... Is that what you're asking there? Of how you make it thicker? That's one way. Someone's asking, can I put thread and stop settings within the design and DesignShop under notes? Yeah, absolutely. So, what do you mean the line weight? The thread? The weight, the thickness of the thread? So that would be here under the right click. So let's say you're using a wider thread, like a yarn, you can change that there, but that's just going to visually show it to you on the screen. So 3.7, 3.8 is what each individual line is. Yeah, so, okay, yes, 3 points is typically the widest I recommend. So, and that's my personal limit. Why do I say that? Notice what happens when I make this ridiculous. See how these are spreading out more? So that's not necessarily a good look. Plus these are getting really tight together. That's why I say 3. That's my personal preference. Can you do more? Yes. But generally it's better to pick a different font than to keep that up. So it's my personal limit is 3 points, you know, maybe 4. But anything more than that, I'll tend to pick a different font that's wider. So like the Block 2 font is a wider font by default. So that would be what if I wanted to go bolder, I would pick a different font. Personally, that's how I do it. So for the question of detail, how can you put stop settings and other details within the notes? Absolutely. So right here you have a notes field. You can get to this in the OS as well, so it's really helpful for your operators to be able to see, you know, what was you planned by this design. If you're doing appliques or multiple settings, what threads you want, whatever you want, you can type in here, right? So I could say threads, and I can list out the threads I want. I could, you know, whatever details you want, where your applique stops go. What stabilizer you're using, anything you want to save, and it will save within the file. And you can then have that forever. So whenever you want to look at it, one thing you'll see right here by the little M, you see that little floating sticky note? That tells me there's a note here. All right. So because of that, I know I can go click on this note and find the details, you know, read through what's been typed in here or add my own details. You can add copyright info. Whatever info you want, and it'll save it there. You also can set up things over here if you really wanted to, of suggestions, but I tend to just use the notes field for typing in whatever I want to remember that I'm going to forget down the line. You know, next year when the client says, hey, I want 2 more of those. What did I do? All right. Well, let's see. Yep. So right there are your notes. This will show you that it's there. You can also, yeah. Any other questions? I don't see any typed in. Let me quick scan. Yeah. All right. Talked about that. So those are all the questions that were sent in ahead of time. What other questions do you guys have? Scrolling through to make sure I didn't miss any. None missed there. None missed there. Cool. All right, y'all. Well, I will see about when it's quieter and I get some of my machines stopped where I can actually make a video by my machines. I'll try to get a video made of kind of a large in the hoop project split showing. I'll set up the design ahead of time and then set it over there. If you have suggestions on what you want to see, I'll just make a file there. Just let me know. Rather than that, I'll just pick something and do it. But if you've got a suggestion, bring it. Antoine. All right, you guys, have a fantastic weekend. I will be back next Friday. So we did this one Thursday, so next week it'll be Friday. So be sure to send over your whatever questions you might have and see if we can get them answered for you. All right. You guys have a great weekend, and next week I'll have different color hair though. I'm dyeing my hair tomorrow. So it's going to be colorful. Have a great weekend, and I will see you guys next week. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have fun sewing.